Hello there. I'm not one for ghost stories. Never have been. I'm a data analyst, for crying out loud. My world revolves around spreadsheets and cold hard facts. So believe me when I say this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. It all went down back in October, on a business trip to Fresno. Now I usually avoid these things like the plague. I'm a creature of habit, and there's nothing habitual about dragging myself across state lines for a PowerPoint presentation. But the boss insisted, and there I was, hurtling down Route 99 in a beat-up rental car, regret gnawing at my gut like a hungry badger. To make matters worse, a storm decided to throw a tantrum right around Bakersfield. One minute the sky was clear, the next it was a war zone of wind and rain. Visibility dropped faster than a toddler's ice cream cone, and my trusty wipers were about as effective as a colander in a downpour. Pulling over was the only option. My heart hammered against my ribs as I gripped the steering wheel, the wipers a pathetic excuse for keeping the windshield clear. Headlights stabbed through the downpour, momentarily illuminating a desolate stretch of highway. Then, a flicker of neon caught my eye. A motel. It wasn't the Ritz-Carlton, by any stretch. Weathered wood siding hung on for dear life, and the neon sign buzzed with a dying ember's glow, but compared to the watery chaos outside, it looked like a palace. Now I confess I have a thing against motels. They always seem to hold the stale scent of regret and a lingering film of cigarette smoke. But that night, anything with four walls and a roof felt like a sanctuary. Pushing open the heavy oak door, I was greeted by a wave of stale air thick with the metallic tang of something unidentifiable. The lobby was deserted, lit only by a single flickering bulb that cast long, skeletal shadows across the threadbare carpet. Behind the counter sat a man, his face obscured by the gloom. He looked like he hadn't seen daylight in a decade, his eyes dull and lifeless. A mumble escaped his lips, something about the last room and a key that felt cold and damp in my hand. The room itself was a reflection of the rest of the place. A chipped coffee mug sat abandoned on the nightstand, its contents a murky brown. The television buzzed with static, a single flickering channel filled with snow. The window, boarded shut and layered with dust, offered no escape, no view of the storm raging outside. Exhaustion, however, was a powerful sedative. I collapsed onto the bed, the wind howling a mournful lullaby outside. Sleep, a heavy, unwelcome blanket, claimed me. Then it started. A faint tapping, rhythmic and insistent, coming from the wall adjacent to the bed. It sounded like fingernails scratching, a sound both irritating and oddly unsettling. At first I blamed the wind, the storm's fury echoing through the hollow walls. But the tapping persisted, a steady beat that chipped away at my sanity. Curiosity, a dangerous companion at the best of times, gnawed at me. Ignoring the knot of dread twisting in my gut, I reached for the rusty fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. Better safe than sorry, you know? Tiptoeing towards the adjoining door, I felt the floorboards creak ominously beneath my weight. The tapping stopped abruptly as I neared. Silence, thick and suffocating, pressed in on me. Taking a deep breath, I reached for the doorknob, my hands slick with cold sweat. A sliver of lightning, brief and shockingly bright, split the sky outside, illuminating the hallway for a fleeting moment. My blood ran cold. There, at the end of the corridor, bathed in the ghostly light, stood a figure. Terror choked the air, thick and suffocating. The figure at the end of the hallway was a child, a little girl no older than 6. Her nightgown, once white, hung in tattered shreds around her frail frame. Her face, pale as moonlight, was devoid of expression, her eyes hollow black pits that seemed to pierce straight through me. A single tear, glistening like a fallen star, traced a path down her cheek. But it was her hands that truly sent a jolt of primal fear through me. They weren't hands at all, not in the human sense. They were impossibly black, a sooty blackness that seemed to absorb all light, like a living hole in reality. It wasn't dirt or grime. It was something far deeper, a darkness that pulsed with a faint, unnatural light. My mind, for a brief, horrifying moment, tried to rationalize. Maybe it was paint, some strange performance art gone wrong. The flickering light, the storm outside, it was all playing tricks on my eyes. But a primal instinct, older than reason, screamed the truth. This was no human child. This was something else entirely, something malevolent and ancient. The girl didn't move, didn't speak. Yet a sound filled the hallway, a low, insidious murmur that prickled the hairs on my neck. It was faint at first, a whisper on the edge of hearing, but it grew louder, a chorus of voices, each one distinct yet blending together in a cacophony of despair. Then, it understood what they were saying. "Let us out." It was terrifying, don't get me wrong, but it sounded almost like a plea. The hallway became a blur of peeling wallpaper and flickering shadows. I could hear the rasping whispers gaining on me, the chorus of voices growing louder, more frantic. The girl took a single step forward, a movement so deliberate it sent shivers down my spine. Her black eyes, devoid of any human emotion, locked onto mine. Panic, a primal force, took over. I didn't think, I just reacted. The fire extinguisher, heavy and cold in my hand, was suddenly a lifeline, but I never reached for it. And you know what I, a grown man, did? I bolted, obviously. A primal scream erupted from my throat, a sound raw and desperate. Turning on my heel, I sprinted. I didn't care about the darkness, the storm outside, the potential dangers lurking in the hallways. All I knew was a need to get away, to escape whatever horror awaited me in that room. My legs pumped, fueled by adrenaline, the worn carpet a treacherous obstacle course beneath my pounding feet. The night air, cold and rain-slicked, slapped me in the face. The storm seemed to have abated some, the wind howling less ferociously. But the memory of that black-eyed girl and the chorus of desperate voices was burned into my memory. Without a second thought, I threw myself into the car, slamming the door shut and starting the engine. Tires squealed on the wet pavement as I peeled out of the motel parking lot, leaving a plume of spray in my wake. The dilapidated neon sign of the motel flickered behind me, a mocking farewell in the dying light. Desperate for a signal, I pulled over at a gas station a few miles down the road. The cashier, a kind-faced old woman, looked up at me with tired eyes. I wouldn't call myself chatty, but I told her what I just saw. And you want to know what she told me? That this motel, the very one where I tried to find a little bit of peace, hasn't been open for years. It burned down in a fire back in '87. Took a family of 3. My blood ran cold, the room, the tapping. The girl, it wasn't a coincidence. But then who checked me in? And where did that metallic smell come from? I don't have the answers, and to be honest, I don't want to know. I'm back home now, safe and sound. Well, mostly. But that night, let's just say some mysteries are better left unsolved.